Good evening. The time is now 6 o'clock, and I would like to call the Beloit City Council meeting to order at this time. First order of business is roll call.
Roll call shows all councilors are present.
Thank you. Next order of business, a pledge of allegiance. Would everyone stand and please join us in the pledge? Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 3 is special order of the day and announcements. 3A is Proclamation 2025-039 recognizing National Fire Prevention Week. Vice President Day will be presenting to Deputy Chief Griffin.
Okay, hear me? Yep. All right, here's our first proclamation. Whereas fire prevention is a critical aspect of public safety that helps protect lives, property, and the environment. And whereas National Fire Prevention Week is observed annually to raise awareness about fire safety and to educate the public on how to prevent fires in their homes and their communities. And whereas this year the National Fire Protection Association has designated this week of October 5th through the 12th of 2025 as Fire Prevention Week, with the theme, Charge into Fire Safety, Lithium Batteries in Your Home, which aims to encourage individuals and families to take proactive measures in fire prevention. And whereas it is essential for every citizen to recognize the importance of fire safety, education, and preparedness, understanding the risks associated with fire hazards can significantly reduce the incidence of fires and related injuries. And whereas whereas our local firefighters and emergency personnel deserve recognition for their bravery and dedication in protecting our community from the dangers of fire, their commitment to educating residents about fire safety practices is invaluable. And whereas educating the public about fire prevention, emergency preparedness, and fire safety practices is essential to reducing the risk of injury, loss of life, and property damage. And whereas the residences of Beloit, Wisconsin are encouraged to review and practice fire safety plans, install and maintain smoke alarms, and learn fire escape routes to protect themselves, their families, and their communities. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Beloit does hereby proclaim October 5th through October 12th, 2025 as National Fire Prevention Week in Beloit, Wisconsin. All citizens are urged to participate in fire prevention activities during this week by practicing home escape plans, checking smoke alarms, attending local education events, and sharing vital information regarding fire safety with family and friends. Presented this 6th day of October 2025, the Beloit City Council. Here's your proclamation. A couple words.
Well, thank you, Council, for recognizing, the Fire Prevention Week. For the City of Beloit, Fire Prevention Week isn't really a week, it's actually the entire month. We get into the schools, we start doing school education, and then we also take all of our 4th graders out to our Survive Alive house, and they actually get to simulate crawling through a house with live smoke. There's instructors throughout that entire house pointing them in the right directions to get out, and they actually get to it's theater smoke is what we use, but they get to practice that. So it's an entire month for us. We really enjoy it, and lithium ion batteries is a thing going on now. Making sure that we charge them appropriately. We're not using the wrong chargers. We're charging them on hard surfaces. Watch them overnight. If they start bulging or smoking, make sure you get them out and get them outside and call 911 so we can evaluate what's going on. So again, thank you for this proclamation, and thank you for the recognition of Fire Prevention Week.
Thank you. Next item, please.
3B is Proclamation 2025-040 recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day. Vice President Day will be presenting to Representative Shelby Vicenton.
Shelby here. I do not see Shelby in the crowd. We're going to go solo up here then. Okay, here we go. Whereas Indigenous peoples have inhabited and stewarded the lands known as Beloit, Wisconsin for thousands of years, contributing rich culture, social, and economic traditions that continue to shape our communities. And whereas the diverse cultures, history, and contributions of Indigenous peoples have profoundly shaped our nation and continue to enrich our communities. And whereas it's essential to recognize the struggles and resilience of Indigenous communities in the faces of colonization, discrimination, and cultural erasure. And whereas Indigenous Peoples Day provides an opportunity to honor these histories, cultures, and contributions of Native Americans while also acknowledging the history and ongoing challenges they face. And whereas recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day promotes understanding, respect, and reconciliation amongst all members of the community, fostering a more inclusive and equitable society. And whereas the celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day, we commit to ourselves to fostering understanding, respect, and collaboration between Indigenous peoples and all members of our community. And whereas it's important to celebrate the resilience, achievements, and heritage of Indigenous people, including their language, arts, knowledge systems, and traditions, which enrich the cultural fabric of our city. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Beloit does hereby recognize October 13th, 2025 as Indigenous Peoples Day in Beloit, Wisconsin, encourages all residents to honor the traditions, history, culture, and contributions of Indigenous peoples through reflection, education, and community engagement. Presented the 6th day of October 2025, the Beloit City Council. So, all right. It's too bad Shelby couldn't be here, but we'll take it on her behalf.
Okay, next item, please.
3C is Proclamation 2025-042 honoring Officer Hannah Carlson. Vice President Day will be presenting to Hannah Carlson.
Okay. Hannah, you come on up. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm all right.
Brought
How
your
are
whole
you?
family? That's
I
awesome.
did, yeah.
Thank you
Got
for
the
being
whole-
here.
And if you guys want to, if you're going to be taking pictures, you can come up here and take some pictures if you like. Yeah.
Gotta love moms.
We can take those pictures.
Yeah, I know, right?
Okay. Here we go. Whereas on the night of May 18th, 2025, Officer Hannah Carlson of the Beloit Police Department demonstrated exceptional courage and selflessness in responding to a life-threatening situation. And whereas upon arriving at the scene of an SUV submerged approximately 40 yards from shore in the Rock River, Officer Carlson recognized the immediate danger to the vehicle's occupant. And whereas without hesitation, Officer Carlson removed her body armor and her duty belt, entered the frigid waters, and swam to the sinking vehicle. And whereas the occupant managed to escape the vehicle and surfaced, Officer Carlson grasped him by his clothing and assisted him in staying above water despite the victim's repeated submersion. And whereas Officer Carlson's decisive actions and an unwavering commitment to saving a life exemplify the high standards of law enforcement and public service. And whereas, in recognition of her bravery, Officer Carlson's actions were highlighted by the FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin, underscoring her outstanding contribution to the safety and well-being of the Beloit community. Whereas Officer Carlson was sworn in as a police officer with the City of Beloit on August 1st, 2022, beginning her service on that date. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Beloit does hereby commend and honor Officer Hannah Carlson for her heroic efforts and unwavering dedication to protecting and serving our community. Presented the 6th day of October 2025, the Beloit City Council. And thank you very much.
Well, I'm not one for public speaking, but I just want to say that I'm very humbled by all the recognition that I received. Us as law enforcement, it's not very common that we receive positive recognition for incidents, even though I see my coworkers do it day in and day out with us. And that's not why we do the job, but I am very humbled and I really appreciate this recognition. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Hannah, thank you.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 4 is public hearings. 4A is consideration of ordinance number 3888, amending the zoning district map of the city of Beloit for the properties located at 1325 and 1335 Bricker Street.
Julie?
Jeff Gard with Combs and Associates on behalf of Eggers Investments LLC has applied for rezoning from R1A Single Family Residential District to C2 Neighborhood Commercial District for the properties located at 1325 and 1335 Risher Street. They are requesting this rezoning to create one larger commercial property to foster commercial redevelopment and also allow an accessory building to be built on the subject properties to serve the existing commercial space at 1344 Madison Road, which is the former Quigley Smart Building, and the applicant's storage needs. The accessory building cannot be built without a principal building because accessory structures cannot be built on vacant lots by themselves. So they did request approval of a certified survey map as well, which cannot occur unless all the properties have the same zoning. Subject properties are designated established neighborhood in the comprehensive plan, so the C2 district is compatible with the comp plan, so no comprehensive plan amendment was needed. The Plan Commission reviewed this ordinance on September 3rd and voted 5-2 to recommend approval. Chairperson Ramsden and Commissioner Abarca voted no. Sorry, that name was missing from the staff report. Chairperson Ramsden indicated that he believes the property should remain residential and has concerns that rezoning the property could cause the value of nearby residential properties to decline. This is on your agenda for first reading tonight.
Thank you. 4A is on the agenda for a public hearing. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing on item 4A. Anyone wishing to speak on item 4A this evening, please step forward at this time. Second call, anyone wishing to speak on item 4A this evening, please come forward. State your name and the municipality, please.
My name is Cynthia McNeese. My address is 2009 North Street. We, the neighbors, are opposed to the zoning change at 1325 and 1335 Richer Street. We, the neighbors, feel that the city will be better served by keeping these lots residential. These lots are great for affordable housing. We feel the change to C-2 zoning will lower our property values and degrade our neighborhood. Historically, the commercial neighborhood zoned properties in our area have declined over the years. We believe this property will be no different. There is a beautiful city park across from this property. We feel that the zoning change will negatively impact our neighborhood. We ask the council members to vote no on this change. There is already outside storage at this property. The owner is allowing storage of his current tenant at 1344 Madison Road to store cable spools on the Richer Street property, while it is still zoned as residential. The code is not being followed. Again, we ask the council members to vote no on this change. Respectfully submitted, Cynthia McNeese.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 4A?
I do agree.
Please come forward to the mic and state your name and your municipality, please.
I'm Christina Popons. I live right next door at 1319 Risher Street, and I do concur with everything she stated. I just think it'll be bad for the neighborhood. It's just not, no.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Please come forward and state your name.
I'm Elizabeth Brewer, and I live in Beloit. I'm on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Richer Park is a very, very nice neighborhood park. I wouldn't want to do anything to discourage people from using that beautiful park. It's a real value to that neighborhood, and it's of real value to Beloit. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Final call. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 4A? Seeing none, I would like to close the public hearing on item 4A. Is there a motion to lay this over? Motion by Dench. Is there a second? Second by Day. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of laying this over, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that is laid over. Next item, please.
4B is consideration of Resolution 2025-131, authorizing a planned unit development master land use plan for the properties located at 1715 Elmwood Avenue and 2500 Cadillac Drive.
Julie?
So I'm going to do the next two items together, if that's okay. So this is, I think you already approved the final plat for the Elmwood Commons Plat 2. This is a rezoning for that same subdivision. So they have proposed 44 new single-family and 11 multifamily homes with the 11 multifamily lots with 4 units per building. They are proposing a PUD for the multifamily lots and then a rezoning to R1B for the single-family lots. They're seeking approval of a PUD to allow for multifamily structures, higher density, reduced setback requirements, which are not otherwise allowed in the R1A or R12 family residential district that the properties currently are. And then for the PUD, that's pretty straightforward. And then the resolution approving the PUD includes attachment A, which includes a number of conditions for the uses. So the allowed uses are multifamily. It identifies the overall PUD area and maximum density. The front setbacks shall be 20 feet, interior side 8 feet, street side 20 feet, and rear setback shall be 30 feet. Maximum building height would be 35. Building coverage is 32% of the lot area, with each building footprint being around 4,100 square feet, and this is for just the multifamily piece. Driveway access shall be provided from the new city streets proposed to be developed as part of the subdivision. In terms of bike and ped facilities, the applicant shall install sidewalks as required by the approved development agreement, which was sidewalks on both sides. Driveway widths shall not exceed 65 feet. Landscape strips breaking up pavement between garage doors may be required as part of the final PUD plan review. And then there's a section on design of the buildings, which is related to section 34, which is the architectural review code. And then landscaping, foundation plantings shall be included around buildings and it will be reviewed as part of architectural review. There's no signage being proposed at this time. However, because any signage within a PUD must be approved as part of a PUD, and multifamily dwelling signs are allowed to be 32 square feet, consistent with recent multifamily PUDs. No more than 2 monument signs, 64 square feet if one-sided, 32 square feet each side if two-sided, are recommended as part of the PUD approval. One at the Elmwood Avenue Cadillac Drive entrance on the PUD parcel, and one at the Aqua Drive Cadillac Drive entrance on the PUD. And the zoning, they're requesting the rezoning to R1B just to allow reduced setbacks, because R1A has like a 30-foot front setback, R1B has 20. And so we've seen this with some other subdivisions that they like the smaller front setback. And so it allows a little bit higher density for the development.
Okay, thank you. This is on our agenda for public hearing. Is there anyone wishing, at this time, I would like to open the public hearing on item 4B. Anyone wishing to speak on item 4B, please come forward. Second call, anyone wishing to speak on item 4B, please come forward. Third and final call, anyone wishing to speak on item 4B, please come forward at this time. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing on item 4B and entertain a motion.
Move.
Motion by Terrell, is there a second? Second by Dench. Questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, 4B passes. Next item, please.
4C was consideration of ordinance number 3889, amending the zoning district map of the city of Beloit for the properties located at 1715 Elmwood Avenue and 2500 Cadillac Drive, was presented with 4B.
Thank you. We did have a presentation, so at this time, I would open the public hearing on item 4C. Anyone wishing to speak on item 4C, please come forward. Second call, anyone wishing to speak on item 4C, please step forward. Third and final call, anyone wishing to speak on item 4C, please come forward. Seeing none, I would close the public hearing on item 4C and entertain a motion to lay this over. Motion by Day, second by Blakely. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of laying this over, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. That lays over. Next item, please.
Item 5 is public comments.
We have reached the point on the agenda for residents to speak to the council about issues that are coming before us or may come before us in the future. Council members may not act on any requests at this meeting, but may refer a speaker to the staff for assistance. We ask that you hold your comments to 3 minutes or less and refrain from personal attacks of any kind. Public comment is a courtesy, and we expect everyone to conduct themselves in a civil manner. Speakers are asked to complete a public comment form. Madam Clerk, was there any forms completed this evening?
There was. First up, we have Kurt Handrick.
Please come forward and state your name and your municipality, please.
Kurt Hendrick, I live at 1729 Kenwood Avenue in Beloit. I'm going to speak on the Park Avenue bike lanes. I want to lift up the importance of having bike lanes. One, I know that there are people concerned about loss of parking, and hopefully that will not be an issue. But that also raises the whole point of having bike lanes is to encourage people to choose alternate forms of transportation that help our community, rather than choosing cars, which, as we know, have a great impact on global warming and pollution. I also want to lift up two issues with that. One is safety. Looking at a history of our community and having been on the school board, 20 years ago, we had 12 elementary schools where kids walked to school with their parents. We would have dozens of us walking, and very few people drove. Now, if you go to elementary school, you see most everybody driving and very few walking, and it's become very dangerous. And as a teacher, having seen kids hit by cars because of how dangerous it's become, we want to switch the way we've done things to create a safer community that encourages people to travel by bike or to walk. But even more importantly, I think it's the health of not just individuals, but of our community and the world. The pollution caused by cars is very large. Our community, according to reports, is one of the worst air quality places in the nation, 3 times the level that the World Health Organization says is healthy. I have a friend who I was meeting with today who just went into hospice. He has stage 4 lung cancer and COPD. And for the past 3 years, he's planted a garden every year because he believes in Martin Luther's quote that if you knew the world was ending tomorrow, you'd plant a tree. But he said that he felt like these past few weeks it got so bad because he had forgotten to check the air quality when he went to work in his garden, and that his health has gone downhill because of that. So when I think about this, I think about our health, but also the future of our community where, according to their own climate action planning team, we know that in 75 years, 1 in every 7 days will be too hot to go outside in our community. And that these things that have happened are by little choices. Do we choose cars over bikes? Do we choose walking, or do we choose things that pollute? And so it's very important for us to realize tonight that this choice is not just a simple one, it's a very important one. It's one more step to saying we want a healthier future. In the words of Scripture, we choose this day which way we will go. We choose life, or as Dumbledore would say, do we choose what is easy or do we choose what is right? So we encourage you to choose to make sure we have a safe passage for our bikes in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Carl Lang.
Okay, I'm Carl Lang. I live at 722 Harrison, just a block from Park Avenue. Had too many operations, so my voice isn't quite up to some of the things. This may seem weird, but I've been involved with this for quite some time in terms of the bicycling stuff. I moved here 22 years ago. Currently, I'm the vice chair of the Parks Commission, board member of Rock Trail Coalition, member of State Line Spinners Bicycle Group. I attend every SLATS meeting. I assisted with the 2017 bike ped plan. So a lot of this stuff with Park Avenue, this is stuff we've been working on for years. And I attend almost all the PIM things related to traffic. So I really appreciate our city engineers, their restraint when people come up with ridiculous comments about some of this stuff, like telling us that adults should be riding their bicycles on sidewalks. In 2018, I started tracking all my bicycle rides, and I realized I have ridden on just about every single piece of road in the city of Beloit. The only ones notably are Prairie south of Switchback Alley and White east of Harrison, which, we're not trying to put bicycle accommodations on every single street. And the bicycle accommodations can vary quite a bit from new construction, where we're talking about putting external bike lane, totally a path alongside the road, bike lanes, ones that we don't really have room for a total bike lane, so maybe a Sharrow, but then we have all our regular small city streets that don't have any specific marking, but, you know, people should be able to ride their bicycles on those. But for what we're doing with this Park Avenue, this is the only reasonable north-south connection we have in the city of Beloit on the east side. It goes 5.25 miles from South Beloit, overlooking Pearl Lake, to the far north in town of Beloit, just past Inman Parkway. The town and South Beloit have completed bike lanes, and we're really looking to have that completed. Some of it's psychological, so that drivers see that bike lane and are expecting bicyclists. I know right now some people go, well, I don't see any bicyclists. Well, you don't. Most people are uncomfortable riding on parts of Park Avenue without the bike lanes. I think the city staff has come up with an excellent idea with a cycle track between Henry and Henry back down to White. And there's apparently some flexibility on which parking places might need to be eliminated in other spots. I'd prefer to have a continuous bike lane, but I know there's considerations right in the area by me, those 3 blocks from Emerson down to Bushnell.
Time.
Okay, that's about, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Rick Barter.
Good evening, Rick Barter, 2560 Blarney Stone Drive, Beloit. First of all, I want to thank those employees from the city of Beloit who have worked on the Park Avenue striping project for the past several years. They are TJ Neese, Scott Prendeville, Bill Frisbee. If I've missed somebody, I apologize, that worked on this project for quite a few years. Their hard work and dedication to this project is greatly appreciated. They put together a plan to connect 3 jurisdictional entities, the town of Beloit, the city of Beloit, and the city of South Beloit, as some of the previous people have talked about. This plan is very viable, not only to stripe a bike lane, but also to slow traffic on Park Avenue. Sure, this is the job of these city employees to do this work, but I think they really believe in this project deeply. For the last 3 years, myself and several of my adult cycling volunteers have taken our youth on weekly bike rides during the June, July, August months that start at the Boys and Girls Club. We even had Officer Tala Marie Cornell, if I pronounced that correct, join us on a bike ride, which was great to see a police officer bike with kids in a non-threatening environment. The use of bike lanes throughout the state line area is critical to this initiative because it gives us a safer route to travel. Our youth cycling group is called the State Line Rockers. I'm wearing a jersey that the students designed, which indicates their interest in cycling. Our adult volunteer group has also taught safe cycling for the school district of Beloit this past summer for 5 days. We fixed up 30 bicycles that were stored in a shed at the high school at no cost to the district. In a partnership with the Beloit Public Library, we have an area where we fix up bikes free of charge to our youth and those people in need who gather in the library at that corner on the left side of the entrance. Nick DeMassis, the library director, has given us access to a small room. We have tools and equipment needed to fix bicycles. Please note that the library is very close to Park Avenue, where bike lanes would be very welcome addition. We also have given away over 20 bikes, helmets, pumps, and locks to our youth who have earned them by showing a keen interest in cycling and showing up on rides. We have access to a fund at the State Line Community Foundation on which we allocate dollars for tutoring our youth on principles of safe cycling. Our adult cycling volunteers also have a very strong partnership with the Bike Elves and Brian Reese, Beloit residents, have given away over 9,000 bicycles to our area youth over the past 10 years. For the last 2 years, in April, we initiated a bike repair class for over 10 students in a partnership with Career Tech that took place every Thursday in April for 2 hours. The point is, our youth cycling initiative is doing very well. Our city manager, Jerry G., I'll mispronounce your name if I try, so I'm not going to do that, and his staff have put together a proposal called Bike Beloit Campaign. If you haven't seen this, I got gonged, sorry. Okay, creating bike lanes in jurisdictions, it's a healthy lifestyle, thank you. And I will submit these documents to whomever, I don't know who. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Next, we have Elizabeth Brewer.
Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity. I'm Elizabeth Brewer, resident of Beloit. I'm here to support ordinance number 3891, which will accommodate biking along Park Avenue. But I also want to point out that this is also very good for pedestrians. I'm an avid pedestrian. I cross Park Avenue multiple times every day on foot, sometimes with children. I'm really aware that calming the traffic on that avenue will be in the interest of all residents. I also want to point out that it will help make the city more, it'll improve bikeability and walkability, and those are major factors in attracting new residents to cities. That bikeability and walkability were major reasons why people who moved during the pandemic chose certain destinations over other destinations. So we have to do this not only for the sake of our residents, but for the future of our city to make it more healthy and attractive for others. I also want to point out that this plan is very much in alignment with the findings and recommendations from the Spring 2024 Transportation Academy in Beloit, which was very much focused on improving safety, health of residents and others, and also bikeability and walkability. It's in support of the city's 2025 strategic plan and its comprehensive plan, and also the current planning for climate action. So please approve this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Lloyd and Patricia Mahid.
Good evening. I don't mind bikes, but we have business at 1601, 1613, 1615, 1617, and then there are 3 businesses on the other side there in that little like mall right across from the old Fairbanks, which is OLM or something now, and we need some kind of parking there. We can't survive. Those businesses need the parking on Park Avenue there from 1601 to probably 19, I think it is. Jerry did come by Friday and they showed us an alternative where they would move it, make our parking smaller, and then put lanes on the opposite side, correct? If you could look at that, we would really appreciate it, but we do need parking for our businesses right there in that area right there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? State your name and your municipality, please.
Okay, I'm Lloyd McGee. I'm kind of coming behind the wife. And, you know, I just want to say that the business it's like 34, 35 years old. They was built on front parking. They got, you know, the storefronts, it has to have front parking to survive. Now, you know, I'm for any alternative that could still, even if we had to adjust to make it maybe more narrow. But when you're talking about that area, we also have to talk about the people that have building business that have got older now, that if they had to park on Washburn or in the back and walk all the way back around to the front to get service at these businesses, then it wouldn't work, because even at my age, half of them can't even hardly walk or, you know, for any certain distance. Then we got a daycare there, the school bus load and unload there. Well, you might say, well, it's parking in the back and it's parking on Washburn, but with the residential there on Washburn and with that small parking lot in the back, I'm having trouble, or not trouble, but I go out and speak to semis that they tell me this. I say, so listen, this parking lot in the back is not even ready for semis. Well, then he said, well, look, man, we can't even go down to the end of Washburn going east because of semis, unloading trucks is not allowed in that residential area. So what they do, they pull in off of Park Avenue and bag these semis in the parking lot, which the parking lot is not even rated for that, and that creates maintenance. But when you talk about the daycare, you're talking about the Spanish store, the tax place, the snack shop, the barber shop, all of these businesses together, we really almost is on top of each other in the back of the parking lot now, you know. And when you talk about Washburn as a residential area, most of the people is parking on the street or don't even have garages. Well, even with the parking lot now, if I come to work, I'll park on the street to make parking even for older people because it is wheelchair access only in the back. But even with the carry out of the businesses there are the snack shop, the school bus load and unload there, and we have seen a second alternative, and if it could be done where it is bike lanes, but this health thing and all of that, I'm for anything that's gonna make our community and our center. But listen, I've been there over 30-something years, and man, ain't too many people walking up and down this street. Ain't too many people even trying to ride no bike on this street. And I'm not saying this won't create more movement, but I know it's other alternatives. And now, do you want to destroy businesses that was built there and built on front parking for 30-something years, being there as a part of the community? You know, and it's almost like murder, or not, I should say murder, but it would be a heck of a negative for us to have to give up the front of our store ways, you know, and my time is up. But I'm just saying, hey, come up with an alternative. If we can come up with that, but it's a must that we keep that front parking on Park Avenue. You know, and
Thank you.
okay, thank y'all, Council.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No more forms submitted.
Okay, thank you. Next item.
Item 6 is consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered at this point on the agenda. And item 6D was taken off of the agenda in the pre-meeting. So it's just 6A through 6C and 6E through 6F.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Motion by Adama, second by Terrell. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Next item, please.
Item 7 is licenses, and there are none. Item 8 is ordinances. 8A is consideration of ordinance number 3891, modifying parking time limits, parking restrictions, loading and unloading zones, and terrace parking on Park Avenue from Bayless Avenue to Broad Street.
Bill, if you can give us a brief presentation on this, please.
Yep, so the city of Beloit is looking to implement a project on Park Avenue to install bike lanes from Broad Street up to Bayless. As you heard earlier, this is part of a three-community kind of transportation corridor for bike and pedestrians. As a result of the added bicycle lanes, though, a portion of Park Avenue with more than one lane in each direction would be reduced to one lane in each direction. So this section that has more than one lane would be from White Avenue up to Henry. On the southbound side, there's 2 travel lanes now. It would be reduced to 1. Northbound is wide enough. A lot of people think it's 2 lanes. People pass you, but it really is only 1 striped lane there. And there's some on-street parking there. But so in addition, on-street parking will be removed in certain portions of the roadway. This project will also slow traffic along the corridor, which has been identified as a chronic speeding location, and will provide improved safety for non-vehicular traffic. The city received a local road improvement program grant for the funding for the bicycle and pedestrian improvements through the corridor. The Traffic Review Committee saw this on July 7th and voted unanimously to recommend the parking changes that are in front of you. And this will show the index of special location updates that are necessary for the original design. After the last meeting, we did go back and look at the design and see if there was any way to accommodate some additional parking that is proposed to be removed. In the southern portion, I'm going to say south of Woodward, where it's primarily residential and it's currently one lane each direction, we cannot make any changes and still have bike lanes installed. We have to have the one bike lane on each side of the road, and the parking changes would be required to make that possible. North of Woodward, we're moving from a lane on each side to the cycle track concept, which is both the north and south travel lane for the bicycle lanes on the west side of Park Avenue. West side is ideal for it because you don't have any cross streets between White Avenue and Eclipse. You get that long stretch. Intersections is the most hazardous place for the bicycle travel. But to accommodate that, you'd have one northbound, one southbound lane, and primarily no parking on the east side. As we went back and looked at it, we could reduce the buffer lane that we had between the bicycles and the southbound travel lane of traffic, and eliminate the kind of painted median between the north and southbound lanes that was originally designed. That would allow the two travel lanes to move west far enough to keep parking on the east side of Park Avenue. It does come with one big drawback, is the kind of the lane where or line where your tire would be for your vehicle, for the cars, will be driving right down the longitudinal joint between the concrete slabs. So it will make a rougher ride for vehicles, and it could lead to increased deterioration of those joints, making the ride even worse and the pavement to fail quicker. It would allow us, though, to keep parking. The areas where we know we've had requests for parking to remain would be between Keeler and Bellevue, and then Copeland up to Summit on the east side.
Okay, thank you. There's been a lot of discussion on this. We've heard some tonight, we've heard some since it's been presented at our last meeting. So what I want to do at this time is entertain a motion to lay this over into our next meeting. And the reason I'm doing that is so we can have discussion, because I don't want to vote it up or down tonight. I want to have a motion to lay this over so we can have discussion on this. Is there a motion to lay this over? Motion by Terrell, second by Adama. So any questions, comments?
Well, I just have a
Counselor
comment,
Forback,
because I
turn your
think-
mic on, please.
I think what we're talking about right now is that we have two proposals. And at least I didn't know about the possible second proposal until our pre-meeting, when we heard about the requests and the concern about the parking in front of the certain blocks. So am I saying this wrong, that we are laying it over and the next, I think we're going to do it?
So right now, what we have on the floor is the one proposal that they presented. The purpose of laying this over is then we can refer it back to staff, and then the staff has another proposal or another option, they can come back and present
they
that
will
to
be
us, and then
presented
we
to
can
us
look at that as well. But
Yes.
if we move forward with this tonight, we will be voting on the original motion
Correct.
that came before us before.
Yes.
So the proper thing to do, in my opinion, is to send this back to staff, have them come up with another option for them to bring back to us, and say, we can look at that option as well.
Right,
That answer
that
your
deals
question?
with still having bike lanes, but also having
I think it would send it
options
back
for
to staff with our.
parking.
Yeah, it would send it back to staff with our questions and concerns.
Yeah.
And from what we're hearing and they're hearing from us tonight, they will take our concerns back and look at another plan.
Okay.
Is there any other questions or comments?
I'd like to make a quick note to that. This area where the businesses are located, I do often frequent. I've been frequenting this area specifically that we speaking on since I was a child. And one business specific that's over there has been there probably since before I was born. So I do kind of share the concerns of the residents in that area and the business owners and such. And I hope we can find solution that'll be fitting to the people that are over there, because I do share their concerns, but I also understand that biking in the city of Beloit is a growing thing, and I would like to see it, but at the same time, like, I like to share that, I share the concern of some of the business owners and residents in that area as well, so I just hope we can find a good solution to this.
We'd like everybody to win.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think, and that being said, Bill, and I think I shared it at the last meeting and even during the week, that I share the sentiments of the business owners there, the Majeeds, that in looking at that, you have about 4 businesses there with one parking lot in the back. And you go back there and it's tight already. I mean, and Mr. Majeed is very correct in saying most of the clientele there is of the elderly age, that if they park in the back parking lot, they are really going to struggle to get into that front door. And then you have a lot of people who come in there with health issues. I just remember my mom used to go there, and for her, if she would have had to walk from the back to the front, it would have been a chore. So when you talk about the snack shop, you talk about the barber shop, you talk about the beauty shop, you talk about the daycare, you talk about the tax place, you talk about the grocery store there, you have a lot of businesses in that area that if we remove that parking, I don't know where they would go. So logically, people would say, well, they can go to the back parking lot. When you have an establishment like the snack shop that's open to 10, 11 o'clock at night, when it's dark, no one's going to feel comfortable walking from the back of the building to the front and then back again. So I do believe we can find something here. I guess my concern is if we find a way to keep the parking on the street, and I know you talked about adjusting the length or the width or whatever. My concern now is if we find a solution to keep parking on the street, how tight is that going to be that if I leave that business to try to get into my car and a car comes down Park Avenue, is that going to be now are we looking at a safety issue? Because now people may not be able to get into their car because the cars that's coming down Park are going to be so close.
Yeah, I don't think it becomes a safety issue because I don't think the parking lane gets reduced beyond what a normal parking lane would be. It's we're losing some painted buffer lanes that would have been there, and vehicles will be closer to the bike lanes than they would have been.
So are we creating a safety issue for the bikers?
There'll still be a couple foot of painted buffer lane between the cycle track and the travel lane. It just would go from like an 8-foot to a 3-foot.
Okay, and so then when you speak of damaging the road or the cars are going to have a rougher spot to drive in the street, now are we looking down the road at more people coming to us now if they have to have car repairs saying the city tore up my car?
That's the potential is we'll get more people complaining about the condition of Park Avenue and that it's a much rougher ride in the areas that parking remained.
So I guess I'm confused as to why would it be a rougher ride? I guess, so we don't have a way to...
Because right now the joints aren't always even.
Okay.
And when a concrete road starts to deteriorate, it happens at the joints because that's where water gets in and freezes and thaws in the wintertime and breaks it apart. And so on the road, there's the transverse joints, which as you're driving across, you get the thump, 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 thump. And then there's the longitudinal joint, which runs the length of the road. So there's one like down the center line, and then there's on the southbound, it's where the dashed white line is. On the northbound, it's where a dashed white line would be. And so it's between the driving and parking lane. So between now and the next meeting, I would encourage you to drive down Park Avenue. And if you're going northbound, have your passenger side tires on what appears where that dashed white line would be. And you'll understand how the ride of the road would be different.
Yeah, I go down there every morning, so I look at that. Okay, so now not to belabor this and make it, I'm just asking these questions as we go along. So now going into this, if we know that now, is there a way, and I'll look to you or the city manager and say, is there a way that we can look at some kind of preventive major or budgeting yearly out to saying we may have to do more work on Park Avenue to repair the road that's being damaged because we did this? Because, if we know it's going to happen,
Yeah,
sometime.
Those joints are already not in very good condition, and it's going to accelerate a little bit. I don't know that it's going to make a drastic acceleration.
Right, but you understand my question, that once we get it fixed now, could we not set aside some money saying, we know
I
eventually
mean,
this may happen?
it would be part of our street maintenance budget and having to allocate it there. But to replace basically the joint lines, you'd have to do the panel on each side, because we generally do full panel replacement. And for I don't have a number offhand, but from Henry down to White Avenue would probably be a few $100,000. We can always work up what that cost would be to have it for the next meeting.
I mean, I guess I would like to see that, but then I also want the public to be clear that I'm not against biking at all. I'm not, but I think that as we look at putting in bike paths, and I think that's going to be huge for the city, for the individuals that ride the bikes. But I think once we start talking about putting in bike paths, we have got to take into consideration some of the businesses that we're putting around it and look at the totality of it and saying, okay, if we remove this parking from here, from this business, where do they go? Right. And I get it. I mean, it's going to connect to all the other municipalities, and that's great. But we got to start looking at, the businesses and saying, so if we move this from here, where does their parking go? Because it's going to go somewhere. And now some streets are only parking on one side of the street, especially in the wintertime. So now are we going to issue more tickets? So I get it. I mean, I admire people who ride bikes. I mean, I did ride them before too, but I'm just thinking when we put in these bike lanes, we got to think about the businesses and saying, where is this traffic going to go if we remove this? And especially in this tight area here, if anybody wanted to drive by there, I would encourage you to drive by there, especially on the weekend. It's really, it's busy during the week, but if you go by there some Friday night or something, you will exactly see. And during tax season, I live on Royce, so when I decide to go there, it's easier for me to walk from Royce to this location, especially during tax season, because that's how far I may have to park. And you may think I'm making it up, but it's really tight over there.
It's true.
Okay.
Jerry?
When making any decision, we look to balance the concerns of residents and businesses, and this is just another one of those examples. Bill, but correct me if I'm wrong here, the anticipated costs of accelerating disrepair, if you will, are not imminent. I mean, it would be something that we'd budget for over a long term, but not, I don't know that this would be a next year budget or even 27 or 28.
But I commend staff on doing this. So I don't think because of all the questions that I'm
No, not at all.
disappointed. I do, but I just want to make sure that, as Council Forbeck said, we try to make everybody happy here. And I just really think we can work out a compromise. And I think I'll be excited to see what we bring forward at our next meeting. Is there any other questions, comments? We do have a motion and a second to lay this over to our next meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you, Bill. Next item, please.
8B is consideration of ordinance number 3892, modifying parking time limits on East Grand Avenue from State Street to Pleasant Street, second reading.
Hey, we did have a presentation on this at our last meeting. This is on our agenda for a second reading. All those in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
Motion by Terrell, second by Blakely. Any questions or comments?
Yes, sir.
Councilor Blakely.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that it comes back to us with a substitute amendment about the time limits.
Correct.
I mean, about what times of day
Right.
the parking would be limited.
Correct. And if I could at this time impose on the city attorney to let us know what that friendly amendment was.
Thank you.
I missed was there a motion made?
Yes.
Was there a motion to approve the ordinance as presented? Or did the person not clarify?
We didn't clarify because it was a second reading, so we probably need to clarify exactly.
You do, yes.
Okay, so can we clarify?
Who made the motion?
Counselor Terrell.
Counselor Terrell.
Okay, who made the second?
Counselor Blakely.
Counselor Blakely and Counselor Terrell. Do you agree to withdraw the motion and second?
Yes.
I do, yes.
All right, the slate is clean. You can make a motion to approve and be specific about what motion you're going to do. There is a substitute amendment in the packet that does make the time from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. is when the ordinance is in effect, and during that time, otherwise, there's no parking restriction.
Okay, so that is a substitute amendment, correct?
The time restriction is in the substitute amendment number 1. Without the time restriction, it's the original ordinance as presented.
Okay, so the substitute amendment is what I'm hearing is what people would like to vote on.
If it is the desire of council to approve the restriction that it's only in place from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., you are to approve the substitute amendment.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the substitute amendment.
Motion by Terrell, is there a second?
And I will second that.
Second by Blakely. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Next item, please.
Item 9 is appointments. There are none. Item 10 is counselor activities and upcoming events.
Counselor Dent.
I would just like to remind everyone that Visit Beloit is continuing its Beloit Bundle Up program where they're collecting coats, gently used or new. If you'd like to donate one of those, drop them off at Visit Beloit on Pleasant Street, the Welcome Center on I-39, Downtown Beloit Association on East Grand, or the State Line YMCA. Again, that's running right now through October 17th. Thank you.
Counselor Blakely.
No report.
Counselor Adama.
Also no report.
Counselor Terrell.
None to report.
Counselor Forback.
Well, our president, President Levy, and I sit on the CDBG committee, and we just had a powerful and wrenching meeting last week. Luckily, we are still getting some money from HUD, but it was less than we really needed. So unfortunately, some of our wonderful not-for-profits just really received less than they wanted, and certainly less than the committee would have liked to have given them. I just want to say that. But we had to do some hard looking at what our priorities were, and it has to be housing and food, really down to the basics, to take a smaller amount of money and do good things with it like our good not-for-profits do. So I just wanted to say that it isn't our not-for-profits that aren't doing it, but it's, we just didn't have enough money to really fulfill what they needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
President
Counselor
Levy, may I interrupt? I just want to clarify that the final vote on the CDBG funding has not yet occurred. So the recommendation from the CDA is what it is, but that will come back to this council for a final decision next week, or the November 3rd?
Right.
November
So
3rd.
I'm just warning my council members.
I appreciate that, but I just wanted to make sure that people knew it wasn't a done deal.
I just wanted to mention one thing. So this weekend on Saturday, we had our 6th annual Community Construction Zone event downtown at Ironworks. And I just wanted to thank everybody that volunteered. We have dozens of volunteers. We had 19 contractors show up, and what this is for the youth in our community to experience what the construction trades are all about. So they get to come out for 3-4 hours and play around on equipment and build toolboxes and do different things. So thank you to everybody, those 19 subcontractors, the Beloit Boys and Girls Club, and Career Tech. We had almost 900 family members show up, so it was a big event. But thank you, everybody.
Thank you, and I have no report. Next item, please.
Item 11 is city manager presentation. 11A is city manager to provide an update on emergency management planning.
Jerry.
Sure. Thank you, Council. So, Council President Levy and I spoke briefly after there was an incident at a school, and he said that he was asked by members of the public what the city of Beloit does for school safety. I should clarify for the public so I don't cause alarm that we have no intelligence of any threats or anything like that. This is just an update in response to some of the queries that the Council President received. But so if you take a look at our deck here, preparing for school or school safety requires participation of many departments. but police, fire, and emergency management in particular. There is a task force. They meet every other month. The mission of the group I will read aloud, but it's to provide a collaborative forum for multidisciplinary school safety team within Rock County to share emergency plans, best practices, lessons learned, where feasible, support resource sharing during emergencies, and coordinate capacity building through training, exercises, and strategic planning. So planning for anything at schools is ongoing and something that requires cross-departmental collaboration, and that does happen with great frequency. Moving on. So they do have exercises, and one of those exercises are currently funded by a grant that was received from Rock County. Those exercises occur in Beloit. And then the last slide really just touches briefly on some of the other training and involvement that our departments do with the schools. So emergency management's involved. The police have SROs at BMHS, Frusen, and Aldridge. And our fire department, not just during Fire Prevention Week, but all year, works with the schools, and including items such as tornado and fire drills, as well as Fire Prevention Week, which we highlighted earlier today. So, planning for any event is something that our departments work on across all the year with many other departments through the city and across the county.
And I think what I want to do here, if anyone has any questions, I would ask that you kind of get with Jerry offline, because as he mentioned earlier, we don't want to have a huge conversation here, because we don't want to give people the idea that there's something going on or we know something. But I think it was important for him to kind of let us know that we do have plans in place, as I'm sure people know, but I think it's always good to let the public know kind of what's going on. So with that being said, next item, please.
Item 12 is reports from boards and city officers. 12A is the presentation of proposed 2026 operating library and capital improvement budgets.
Eric.
But before Eric, I do want my mic to go off. I do want to just applaud Eric and the entire finance team. Winning that triple crown, if you will, of budgeting in government finance is something that I think doesn't go overlooked, but might be unappreciated or underappreciated at times. And Eric and his team do a tremendous job. I talk with him about the budget. I don't know if it's daily or it's certainly weekly. I'm in his office quite a bit. And I think that the budget for this upcoming year is one that reflects the council's goals, individual conversations I've had with you, as well as just needs that our city has. I think I'll be very pleased with the presentation tonight. And Eric will take it from there.
All right, thank you. So we actually began this process nearly 5 months ago when we started to look at the capital improvement plan, where we gathered requests from all the department and division heads. And then since that point, we've met throughout the last 5 months, going through each of those requests, along with all of the department and division heads' budgets line by line, just to make sure that we were able to come back to you tonight to present to you a balanced budget. And so in summary, the total budget for all funds is around $115 million, which happens to be about $2.3 million less than what it was in 2025. The general fund budget is just under $41 million, a very modest increase of 0.6%, just shy of $250,000. All of the enterprise funds combined are about $560,000, or $23.5 million in total. So this is a high level of all of the differing fund types. You can see the total of right around $115 million. The debt service fund, special revenue funds, and the capital improvement funds are really the driving forces of this entire budget. And I'll speak to each of these different fund types throughout the presentation. So as 80% of our budget is made up of people and benefits, we always like to highlight what some of those changes are in our staffing plan. For the most part in 2026, the staffing stayed pretty consistent. We did have one position in the clerk treasurer's office, the assistant treasurer, actually be replaced with a part-time collection clerk. At the library, we're going to have the new Discovery Place, and through fundraising efforts to help fund those positions, we're going to actually have 11 positions at the library for the Discovery Place. 1 will be full-time, 10 of them will be part-time. Every year, we do take a look at different allocations throughout the budget to see what staff does and to see if those allocations need to be changed. So we do that on an annual basis, which makes up another big portion of the budget. So along with some of the new staff positions, we also want to take care of our existing staff through the retention efforts. And so we have a proposed 3% across the board increase for all non-represented positions. All of our union personnel will follow our union collective bargaining agreement. I'm also happy to say that the health insurance premiums have maintained the same at 10% for employees, and we have not had a change in those premiums since 2020, which is pretty good to be able to be that consistent over that many number of years. We also have some other highlights, financial highlights in the 26 proposed budget. The main one being the net new construction, which drives our levy limits. We had a slight increase over 2025 to 1.3%. According to the legislation that passed a couple of years ago, that's what's driving the increase in the shared revenue of about 2.6% or about $520,000. We had a slight increase in our state highway aids of just over $7,000, and our personal property aid is going to remain the same. We do continue to see some acceleration or appreciation on our assessed and equalized values. Equalized values are outpacing the assessed values. Assessed values went up 1.5%, and our equalized are up about 5.25%. Our municipal property tax levy just came in shy of $1 million increase, or 5%. Again, we are still abiding by the strict levy limits according to the state of Wisconsin. Some other revenues that we take a look at on an annual basis are the fees and charges that we charge. We try to do that in order to offset the best we can the costs that it takes to provide those services. So we do look at those on an annual basis. There were various increases throughout the city. Most of those are in our park and rec programs. And so we had some increases, some decreases, and we also took a look at those programs themselves, added some, and actually removed some programs that were no longer being utilized. We did take a look at golf and cemetery fees to try to remain competitive and to help offset growing costs. There was a proposal to increase our solid waste fee from $16 to $18. The primary reason for that is the increase in the tipping fees at the landfill. There was also an increase in some cart rental fees. Again, the cost of the carts are increasing, so we're just passing those costs along to the residents when they request new carts. We're also proposing a sewer rate increase on a tiered basis, 6% for industrial users, 5% for commercial users, and the standard 4% for residential users. And what those fees are going to be doing is offsetting the debt service that we had to borrow to do the sewer treatment plant upgrade project. So here are the different types of revenues for the general fund. You can see that the only two increases are in the tax line and in the intergovernmental aid line. The tax line is driven by that net new construction number, the 1.3%. The intergovernmental aid number is being driven by the shared revenue. All other revenue sources either decreased or stayed the same. The biggest decrease was actually the other funding source, and that was $431,000, and that's because we did not apply any fund balance in the 2026 budget, and we did in 2025. So here's just a graphical representation of the revenue streams. Again, you can see that 61% of our overall general fund budget comes from state and local aid, or state and federal aids. And taxes make up 30%. So among all other funding sources that we have, only makes up 9% of our overall budget. These are the individual department line items from an expenditure standpoint. a 0.6% increase that I mentioned earlier in the general fund. That's not a very big increase when you look at what the average annual rate of inflation has been over the last few years. Some of the major changes that we've seen here are from our Human Resources Department, our Community Development Departments. Those were two particular departments that had items that were one-time budgeted items in 2025 that are no longer there in 2026. So that's what reduced the cost in those particular departments. Police and fire changes are generally related to wages and benefits, as again, 80% of our budget is driven by wages and benefits. The city manager's budget showed a slight increase, which we have some particular programs that are budgeted for 2026. That is going to be doing some community surveys. The Public Works Department showed a decrease in overall expenditures, mainly due to some commodity price changes, as well as vehicle replacement fund reductions and some allocations to wages in certain DPW departments. Here's the graph of the departmental expenditures. You can see that police and fire make up about 61%. Public Works just under 20%. These are very common and normal allocations throughout the state, and other municipalities would see those same types of allocations, so this is very much in the norm. Next is the special revenue funds. These would be your tax incremental districts, grant funds, solid waste, library, and recycling funds. The main driver here of the increase, as I mentioned earlier, was the proposed rate increase of our solid waste fee from $16 to $18, as well as the addition of the library play place. Those are both special revenue funds. The other one would be any increases in our tax incremental districts, particularly our newly created tax increment district number 15, which is the remnant of the gateway for those who don't know. Next would be the proposed enterprise funds. These are the golf course, cemetery, all of our utilities, and our ambulance fund. I mentioned the storm or the sewer rate increase proposed. That's what's making up the majority of the change here. There was no proposed rate increase for either stormwater or the water utility. I did mention the golf and cemetery fees also. This is where those would show up as well. Internal service funds are mostly made up. The majority is our health and dental insurance. That includes both active and retiree health insurance, as well as our municipal insurance program and our fleet program. Health and dental, as you would imagine, makes up the majority, over almost $12 million of the 15 that's budgeted. They're both in a positive fund balance at this point. Our retirees tend to fluctuate a lot more than our active employees do. So we're always looking to find ways to fund that particular fund. We did see a bump in our experience mod factor in our workers' comp rate this year. That went from 0.98 to 1.17, which is the highest it's been in a while. But one of the bad years and how that's rated is going to be dropping off next year. So we're hoping that in 2027 we'll see that decline. The debt service fund, this was a 12.5% increase. That's primarily due to the fact that we, as you know, we did a bond issue in 2025 for the first time since 2022. So this is really kind of a 3-year bond issue that we did in 2025. So this is now just paying back the general obligation debt that we've have outstanding according to the amortization schedules. It should be noted, though, that debt service funds are exempt from the levy limit, so we can always make sure that we're levying the proper amount of money to make sure we're paying back our debts. The final fund type is capital improvement fund. I mentioned earlier that this is a decrease of about $5.5 million. These funds are the capital improvement fund, CIP engineering, the equipment replacement, and computer replacement. So of the 18 million, about 14 million is our capital improvement plan. The other portions of the plan would be equipment replacement and computer replacement. The primary funding source for the capital improvement plan is our bond issue. We tend to issue about $5 to $5.5 million a year. And the majority of our capital improvement plan is infrastructure, which is just close to $9 million. The other major factor in the capital improvement plan would be replacement costs for equipment, like major equipment, and then buildings and grounds. So our municipal tax levy is increasing by 5.18%. You can see the $700,000 in the debt service that I just mentioned. Again, we hadn't done a bond issue in 3 years, so when you do a larger bond issue like that, you will see an increase in your debt service costs. We try to smooth those out the best we can so that we don't have large fluctuations in our municipal levy on an annual basis, so that should be right around the same amount going forward. We should start to pay off about the same amount of debt on an annual basis that we're borrowing. We also have a proposed increase of 4% in the overall tax rate, which is 2.63, which is 2.63 or 0.263 cents per thousand of assessed value. So on a $100,000 home, it would be an increase of $26.30 for the local share only, by the way. So this is just a schedule here showing what our tax rates have been over the last 5 years. You can see that in the big decline in 2022 was the first year of our annual assessment revaluation. Since then, it's been pretty consistent, around that 7.5 to, upper 6, mid 6, upper 6s. So it's pretty consistent tax rate overall. Here's just a graph showing the equalized values and assessed values and how the equalized values continue to outpace the assessed value. If this trend continues, which we anticipate that it will, based on local sales, we would anticipate doing another revaluation in the year 2027, not next year, but 2027. And that will try to then, again, bring the equalized value up to the same level as our assessed, or bring the assessed values up to the same level as our equalized values. So some important next steps in the budget process. We're going to have a budget workshop 1 week from today at the library at 10 a.m. The 2 weeks from tonight will be the public hearing at 6 o'clock. And then 2 weeks after that, we'll bring the proposed budget back to you for consideration for adoption on November 3rd. And I would be happy to take any questions you have at this point.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thanks.
Eric, next item, please.
12B, the city council may adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.85 sub 1 sub G for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, and section 19.85 sub 1 sub E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, namely to discuss a potential collective bargaining agreement with WPPA, LEER Police Union. The council may reconvene into open session to take action on the matter or matters discussed in closed session.
Is there a motion to go into close? Motion by Terrell, second by Blakely. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you.
I am speaking to Resolution 2025-136, which is a resolution approving and ratifying a collective bargaining agreement between the City of Beloit and the Wisconsin Professional Police Association Law Enforcement Employee Relations Division for the term January 1, 2026 through December 31, 2028. As we discussed in closed session, I'm just going to hit the highlights for the agreement, but we are very pleased to have a tentative agreement with the union. They have ratified the agreement last week. The agreement is for 3 years, so it'll go from 2026 to 2028. We made a lot of changes with regard to compensatory time, holiday pay, overtime, to be as consistent as possible with other communities while recognizing the unique needs of Beloit. This contract, we were able to restructure the wage schedule for the union, and we oftentimes will hear that the employees need to be better paid, and we recognize that. We also have to try to address our recruitment and retention of our employees, and we spent a lot of time revamping that entire schedule. So we get employees through the schedule quicker and sooner than they would be normally. And then we've also adjusted the wages, the steps in between the wages to be more consistent across the board. We also eliminated the academy pay, which puts us very competitive with other communities with regarding to a starting wage. And that, coupled with the other benefits that are afforded our employees through the CBA and also through our health insurance fund, we believe we position the city to be very competitive in recruiting employees, and we believe also that we are doing what is necessary to make sure that our employees are well compensated for the work that they do for us.
Okay.
I move.
Motion by Forback, second by Terrell. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. There a motion to adjourn? Motion by Adamo, second by Forback. All those in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
All right.
All right, guys.
Y'all have a good night.
Thanks, everybody. See
You too.
Go Brewers.
You guys sounded so good. That